Hey guys, Jillian with Far Out Tiny Homes here. Today we're going to talk about something a little different. Living tiny definitely has its pros. There are so many great aspects of living a minimalist lifestyle, especially when you include the kiddos. But let me tell ya, our family of 4 plus 2 dogs lived in under 200 square feet for just shy of 2 years, and we definitely gained some experience. Today we're going to talk about the ugly sides of going tiny. Stay tuned. Before our family of 6 went tiny, we lived in a normal 2,000 square foot house in Kansas City. There were some really big downsides to going tiny. Some of those downsides were based on budgetary constraints. We only had so much money and so much time in order to build this house and get out here to Las Vegas. And some of the downsides just come from experience, just living in a tiny space and not exactly knowing what you are going to need. The worst thing for Josh and I as a married couple was privacy. If you haven't checked out the tour video of the Blue Baloo, I'm gonna go ahead and link it above, and you can see the exact house that we did live in for just shy of 2 years. You'll notice that both of the lofts are connected with a catwalk, but there's no division of space in between the lofts. So privacy as a married couple was absolutely non-existent. The lack of privacy did lead to some troubles. We weren't able to connect on an intimate level, and we really weren't able to chat and keep those conversations private that we needed to keep private. So we would have to make, special dates to meet for a coffee or go out for dinner when we could, to have those conversations that the kiddos really didn't need to listen to. And while that kind of put us back into this idea of dating, which was really fun, it also was kind of an inconvenience because we're working full time, and as normal couples, the unwind time happens kind of at bed, and you're able to connect before you go to sleep. But we had to find extra time in our schedule to connect, go for walks, and just be able to talk and make sure, hey, you're doing okay, I'm doing okay, the kids are doing great. Finding that time can be really difficult. And this was the first house that we owned, and we love this house, and we still love the Blue Baloo. It was really difficult as a married couple to find those times to just be together with one another. And because we weren't able to share that, physical intimacy, it just kind of put a damper on our relationship. So when we're talking to clients that do have children and they want to go tiny, the number one thing is, let's create a space where you all definitely have separation and privacy. And that really leads me to the next downside of going tiny, is the lack of separation of space. I love my kids, I love my dogs, I love my husband so much. But let's be clear. Mamas need time away. Dads need time away. Kids, they need a separation, just even for 10 to 15 minutes a day. Sometimes that's all you need, just the ability to get away, to have a quiet space, to read, to write, to draw, whatever it is as a human you need to do to kind of realign and re-engage with yourself. That was non-existent for all 4 of us. So as you guys know, the kiddos shared a loft, and that was an 8x8 space. We had 2 twin beds in that area. And so even from their perspective as a child, they really shared space so much. The only separation they really received was when one kid wanted to go play out in the yard and one kid wanted to stay up in the loft and hang out. Which you can imagine, that's very difficult. So me personally, I needed that separation of space. And I will tell you that I definitely was moody living in the tiny house. The only time I could get away was when I was a yoga instructor. The only time I could get away was when I went early to the yoga studio when nobody was around, and I just had the time to just breathe and think about, what's going on in my life and ways to find, a positive perspective. Because believe me, it's difficult to stay positive when you don't have separation of space, you're always together in a small area, you're disconnecting from your husband, from your partner. I mean, life can get real quick. And it definitely is something to take into mind as you're designing your tiny home, or even just considering going tiny. Keep in mind, you need the separation of space. Parents need to have some privacy, and so do kids. And just touching on the intimacy thing for a minute, like if you have kids living in your home, their ears are everywhere. I'm just like, how do we get away? Like how do we function as a married couple? It's like, I will say, just like from my perspective, like when you're going tiny with a family, just make sure you design your home correctly so you can tackle those most important elements to your family. And if privacy is a big concern for you, I strongly suggest parents having a bedroom maybe on the first floor and the kiddos' lofts being on the opposite side of the home, just so you can have those moments together, because little ears, they hear everything. So if you like the content that you are seeing, give us that thumbs up and please subscribe. It means the world to us to be able to get in front of all of you beautiful souls every Tuesday and Thursday and share what's most important to us. Okay, so This was more so just a pet peeve, and with the correct design, you can really get around this. So this isn't a big one. It was more so just frustrating to me. You get your kiddos off to bed, you get them their water, you go through the whole routine, you get yourself up into the loft, and if you remember, the Blue Baloo has like a fairly steep bookcase ladder to get into the lofted space, and you kind of have to like crawl into the bed. We would get like all hunkered down, and then all of a sudden, one kiddo would need to use the bathroom. So one kiddo would crawl over the next kiddo, and then there would cause like an issue, and then down the catwalk, and then down the bookcase ladder, use the bathroom, go all the way back up. It was always like an event, and I just noticed that like I'm one of those humans that I like to go to bed and I like to read, but like I'll use the bathroom like 4 times before I go to sleep, and I don't really get what that is. That might be like a getting older thing. Ugh. But it happens, and so I was like, having to scooch my way off the bed, go all the way down the bookcase ladder, use the restroom, go all the way back up. And like right when you're getting ready for bed and you're like doing that routine, it's like fine. But in the middle of the night, I will tell you, I don't know how I didn't break my neck falling down that bookcase ladder. Like, I'm just gonna say, the bookcase ladder is steep, and when you're like having to pee in the middle of the night, and it's like, I trip over my own shadow like during the day. So it is a wonder that I was able to survive, living in a tiny house for so long, just for that one fact of like having to get out of the lofted space, get my butt down that bookcase ladder, and then all the way back up without, messing up. So last but surely not least is something that most tiny home enthusiasts or folks that have already gone tiny can relate to, is the lack of parking and the lack of lawful permitting that surrounds the tiny home movement itself. So for us personally, we were able to find a manufactured home community, and we did live there for a while, and there were some really nice folks that lived in this neighborhood, which made it okay for us to stay there for as long as we did. But there were a lot of not okay folks. Specifically, one of our neighbors had just some stuff that he needed to like tend to on a mental level, and it's scary living next to somebody that is really unstable. And I know that it's kind of a thing to say that some stereotypes are true, but for our experience, and I'm speaking from an authentic place, is we did experience some unsavory characters living in the trailer park. Because let's be real, manufactured home community, it was, but it was a trailer park, and our bikes got stolen out of our yard. Like, people would come and just walk around, like come into our fenced off area, just walk around our house, and we'd be like, can I help you? Oh, I'm just checking out the unit. We had multiple people just come and knock on our front door and say, hey, can I just come look in the unit? I'm your neighbor, and it's just like, it was really, really off-putting, because we wanted to welcome, everybody like into this movement, and absolutely, we totally will show you around, and like that's so great. But when you start to like attract people that are just coming to look at like what you have in there, which is kind of the vibe that some of those people put off, the whole thing became unsettling, and it kind of turned into a situation where we just put a bunch of pictures up on the internet and we're like, hey, we can't give any more private tours anymore, but you can go look on, you know, our website and check out the tiny home. And then that would irritate people, like, oh, you can't, you know, you're not going to let us into your house. And it's like, if I showed up at your house and asked for a tour, would you give it to me? So that's just something, that's just like some of the stuff to consider that does come with the tiny home lifestyle, is that people are curious. There is a lot of judgment out there. You will be judged. It sucks. Like, people are sometimes, but you have to know that, like, when you're gonna live a different lifestyle, people are going to judge you because maybe they don't understand, maybe they just think it's weird, and that's just what it is. So whatever. Back to the neighborhood. So when we did live there, like I was saying, our bikes got stolen. We did have like people having loud parties, and we did see like people that were just highly intoxicated, like meandering through the neighborhood. The cops were in the hood all the time, and it was just a place where we're like, you know, we love this lifestyle, but we don't love where we're at. Unfortunately, you know, tiny homes aren't welcome everywhere, and so we kind of, you take what you can get. We eventually did move out of that neighborhood, and we actually moved into private property for a while, which was really, really great. It was, you know, it was safe, it was really nice. And then eventually we decided that until we can buy a parcel of land for our tiny home, we were going to move back into a regular home. So the $1 million question, would I go tiny again? 100%, yes, I would. This movement is just so important to me. I just, as a human to human, I believe that this could be the future of housing on so many levels, no matter the income. Just the idea of living a minimalist lifestyle, I think, is going to be forefront in the next decade, if not sooner. So I would do it again. We do plan on doing it again, but we have to work with our local zoning and planning to make that happen, which I am so excited to share, you know, all this news that we're just kind of sitting on. So that will come, but we are making moves on a local level. So one day, tiny houses more maybe on a permanent level can be a staple here in Las Vegas and Clark County. So definitely stay tuned for that. But yes, I would 100% go tiny again in a heartbeat with the correct design and layout. So, I mean, you know, overall, we loved living tiny. We learned so much about like just ourselves as individuals, and then ourselves as a family unit living in such a small space. So if you're contemplating it, I mean, just do your research. Create your design that fits your budget and meets your needs. Also a design that you can grow into. If we had to do it all over again, we totally would. It changed our life, and it changed how we viewed happiness. And so we do say, like, you know, if you're considering it, if it's even something that's kind of on your radar, just do your research, prepare yourself, like know exactly who you are and what your needs are as a human, and then try to best guess, if you're in a family unit, what those family unit needs will be currently, and then will be in the future. And that's our best advice, and that is the story of, you know, the not so glamorous part of going tiny.